Aerial shot of a lonely hill at sunrise. Morning fog covers an old wooden mansion. Welcome to a story that begins exactly 100 years ago. Hidden on a lonely hill in a quiet American town stands a house that has watched generations come and go. For decades, people whispered about strange sounds, mysterious lights, and secrets buried beneath its wooden floors. Tonight, we step inside to discover the forgotten history of the Silent Hill house. Construction workers building the mansion in 1926. Horse carts. Vintage cars, people wearing 1920s clothing. The year was 1926. America was changing rapidly. New roads connected growing towns. Families dreamed of better lives and wealthy businessmen. George Anderson decided to build the grandest home anyone had ever seen in the valley. He spared no expense, choosing the finest oak wood, handmade bricks, and elegant stained glass windows. The mansion quickly became a symbol of hope and success. The Anderson family moving into the mansion. Children laughing, neighbors watching. When the Anderson family finally moved in, the entire town gathered to celebrate. Music filled the air, children played across the gardens, and guests admired every room inside the magnificent house. No one could imagine that this joyful beginning would soon become one of the town's greatest mysteries, nightfalls. Wind blows. One upstairs window slowly opens by itself. Only weeks after the celebration, strange events began. Every night, footsteps echoed through empty hallways. Doors quietly opened on their own. A single light appeared in the attic, even though no one was inside. Some believed it was only the old house settling. Others were certain that something far more mysterious had awakened within its walls. And this was only the beginning. The family eating dinner. A grandfather clock suddenly stops at exactly 11:11 p.m. The Anderson family tried to ignore the strange events. George believed every sound had a logical explanation. But one night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, the grandfather clock suddenly stopped. Its hands froze at exactly 11:11 p.m. No matter how many times it was repaired, every night it stopped at the same mysterious moment. Visual. The youngest daughter hears whispers in the hallway and follows them. Emily, the youngest daughter, was the first to notice something unusual. Late one evening, she heard a soft whisper calling her name. Curious, she stepped into the dark hallway. The whisper grew louder with every step, leading her toward the attic stairs. Just as she reached the first step, the voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only complete silence. Visual. George searches the attic with an oil lantern. The next morning, George climbed into the dusty attic carrying an old oil lantern. Thick cobwebs covered forgotten furniture. Broken picture frames and old wooden trunks. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary until he noticed fresh footprints in the dust. The strange part was that the footprints ended in the middle of the room, with no sign of anyone leaving. Visual thunderstorm outside. The family gathers together while lightning flashes through the windows. That night, a powerful storm swept across the valley. Rain pounded against the windows as thunder echoed through the hills. Suddenly, 3 loud knocks came from the front door. George opened it immediately, but no one was there. Only the cold wind blew across the empty porch. As he slowly closed the door, he noticed something lying on the floor, a small, weathered key that none of them had ever seen before. The mystery had only just begun. George carefully examines the old rusty key under a lantern. The small brass key looked ancient. Its surface was covered with scratches, and a tiny number 27 was engraved near the handle. George searched every room in the mansion, trying every lock he could find. None of them matched. It was as if the key belonged to something that no longer existed, or something that had never been discovered. Visual. Emily discovers a loose wooden floorboard in the library. The following afternoon, Emily wandered into the quiet library. As she reached for an old history book, the floor beneath her creaked. One wooden plank felt loose. Kneeling down, she gently lifted it and found a folded piece of yellowed paper hidden underneath. It wasn't a letter, it was a hand-drawn map of the mansion, marked with a red circle beneath the cellar. Visual. George and his son enter the dark cellar with lanterns. That evening, George and his eldest son carried lanterns into the cold stone cellar. The air was damp and every step echoed through the darkness. Following the map, they reached the far wall, where an old wooden shelf stood untouched for years. As they pushed it aside, they uncovered a narrow iron door hidden behind the bricks. Visual. The mysterious key unlocks the hidden door. A dark staircase leads underground. George slowly placed the old key into the rusty lock. To everyone's surprise, it fit perfectly. With a loud metallic click, The hidden door creaked open for the first time in decades. A cold breeze drifted upward from the darkness below. Stone steps disappeared into an underground passage that no one knew existed. Holding their lanterns tightly, the family exchanged nervous glances and took their first step into the forgotten secret beneath the Silent Hill house.
George, Emily, and her brother slowly descend the stone staircase with lanterns. The stone staircase seemed endless. Every step echoed through the darkness, while the air grew colder with each level they descended. Their lanterns cast long shadows across the damp walls. It felt as though no one had walked these stairs for 100 years. Visual, they discover a hidden underground chamber filled with old furniture, trunks, and dusty shelves. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a large underground chamber. Wooden shelves lined the walls, covered with thick layers of dust. Old trunks, broken chairs, and forgotten paintings filled the room. Everything had been carefully stored, then completely abandoned, as if someone had left in great haste. Visual, Emily opens an old wooden chest and finds hundreds of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. In the corner of the chamber stood a weathered wooden chest. Emily slowly lifted the heavy lid. Inside were hundreds of handwritten letters, each tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The oldest letter was dated 1926, the very year the mansion was built. The final letter ended with a chilling sentence. If you have found these words, the truth has waited a century to be heard. Visual, George notices a second iron door at the back of the chamber. Strange scratching sounds come from behind it. As George carefully folded the letters, a strange scratching sound echoed through the chamber. Everyone froze. The sound came from a second iron door hidden behind stacked wooden crates. Unlike the first door, this one had no keyhole, no handle, and no visible way to open it. Then, without warning, 3 slow knocks echoed from the other side. The family stared at one another in complete silence, realizing they might not be alone beneath the Silent Hill house.
The family shines their lanterns toward the sealed iron door. No one spoke. The 3 mysterious knocks had stopped, but the silence felt even more unsettling. George stepped closer to the iron door, placing his hand against the cold metal. To his surprise, it felt warm, as though someone or something had been standing on the other side only moments before. Visual. George studies the old letters by lantern light. George unfolded another letter from the wooden chest. This one was written by the mansion's original architect. It warned that a hidden passage had been sealed forever after a terrible accident during construction. The workers had sworn never to speak of what they had discovered beneath the hill. Visual. Emily discovers strange symbols carved into the stone wall. While everyone focused on the letters, Emily noticed unusual symbols carved into the stone wall beside the iron door. The markings looked carefully engraved, not random scratches. As she gently brushed away years of dust, the symbols formed what appeared to be an old map leading even deeper underground. Visual. The ground shakes slightly. Dust falls from the ceiling, and a hidden mechanism begins to move. Without warning, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling as a deep rumbling echoed through the chamber. Slowly, the sealed iron door began to move on its own, opening just a few inches. From the darkness beyond came a cold gust of air carrying the faint smell of old wood and forgotten history. The family raised their lanterns, knowing that whatever waited ahead had remained hidden for nearly 100 years. George slowly pushes the heavy iron door open. Dust fills the air as the lantern light reveals a narrow tunnel. George took a deep breath and pushed against the ancient iron door. With a loud groan, it slowly opened. A narrow stone tunnel stretched into complete darkness. Thick dust floated through the air, untouched for decades. The walls were lined with old wooden beams, and every step echoed as if the tunnel itself was alive. Visual. The family discovers an abandoned underground railway cart and rusty tracks. As they walked deeper, they found something unexpected, an old mining cart resting on rusty iron tracks. The wheels had not moved in nearly a century. Nearby, broken tools and faded lanterns lay scattered across the ground, suggesting that workers had once spent countless hours beneath the hill before, suddenly abandoning everything. Visual. Emily notices a faded American flag hanging inside a hidden room. At the end of the tunnel, they entered a small chamber unlike any other. Hanging from one wall was a faded American flag, carefully folded around a wooden frame. Beside it stood shelves filled with journals, photographs, and official documents dating back to the 1920s. Someone had preserved this room with great care, as if they expected future generations to find it. Visual. George opens an old journal. A photograph slips onto the floor showing the mansion before it was built. George carefully opened the oldest journal. As he turned the first page, an old black and white photograph slipped onto the floor. It showed the hill exactly 1 year before the mansion was built. But there was something impossible in the picture. Standing in the center of the empty field was the same mysterious house, exactly as it looked today. The family stared at the photograph in disbelief, realizing that the greatest mystery was only beginning. As George continued reading the old journals, the truth finally became clear. The underground chamber had never been built to hide treasure. It was created to protect priceless historical records, family memories, and important documents during uncertain times. The strange sounds, mysterious footsteps, and moving doors were not supernatural at all. They were caused by hidden mechanical systems, old tunnels, shifting wooden beams, and the powerful winds that traveled beneath the mansion. The Anderson family carefully preserved every letter, photograph, and journal they had discovered. Historians confirmed that the collection revealed a forgotten chapter of the town's early history. What had once been feared as a haunted house became one of the most important historical landmarks in the region. Exactly 100 years after the mansion was built, it reopened as a museum. Visitors from across America came to walk through its halls, explore the hidden chamber, and learn the incredible story that had remained buried beneath the hill for an entire century. Some mysteries are solved not by fear, but by curiosity. The Silent Hill. House reminded everyone that history is often hidden in the quietest places, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. And although its greatest secret had finally been revealed, every old house still keeps a few stories that only time can tell.